Stock market crash 1929 happened at a time when the countries were booming and the economy was developing. The position of the USA at the period was flourishing as it emerged as a superpower just after the World War I. The blooming period was known as Roaring Twenties, when all sectors of the economy was booming, and the crash came as a shock to the entire country and other countries, since most of the countries were interconnected with each other on the basis of trade and commerce. This led to a global depression, and almost all the countries were affected, causing widespread downfall. The crash was first identified on 24th October 1929, which is popularly known as Black Thursday, and the crash continued to a week. However, the effects of the same were felt for many years, and it took almost 2 decades to come out of the situation, and countries had to adopt different measures for the same. Stock market crash of 1929 is a popular event in the global history, and the crash has left an unforgettable experience for the countries. The period of the beginning of the 20th century saw many developments throughout the globe, and countries were fixed in a turmoil of changing from one phase to another phase. Many countries were under colonial rule, and some countries were fastly developing in terms of trade, economy, and commerce. Stock markets had been in existence from the early 13th century, where the practices of trading on debts were common. It all started with the merchants trading in Venice, who used to carry papers and documents and write down all the debts and trades and sell the same if required. Moving ahead, a better way of trading was determined, and merchants started trading on different voyages, which also met its end as a result of the pirates and merchants had to derive different ways to reduce the losses. It was finally in the 18th century when the USA got the world's first stock exchange, a systematic way of trading and covering the debts. It was first established in Philadelphia. However, the most effective stock exchange till date is the New York Stock Exchange, which was placed in the famous Wall Street till today. On the other hand, London Stock Exchange was also formulated, however, provided low safety standards in comparison. At the same time, India was under the colonial rule, and the beginning mark of the stock exchange was the collection of people below the banyan tree, which later went on to become Bombay Stock Exchange. Finally, in 1994, the National Stock Exchange was established, which offered better safeguards, and currently trading has become a safe option for people and investors to trade. During the 1920s, the world economy on one part was low as a result of the First World War, and only a few countries were booming. The USA was one among them, and it emerged as a superpower at the end of the war. The economic condition of the country was booming, and as a result, the financial institutions took a step ahead and started offering loans and debts to enhance the luxuries of people. As a result, people took advantage and started buying cars, and urbanization was on the rise. Agriculture took a step back, and major developments took place. However, all this was coming to an end with circumstances which covered the situation, and the case of Hatry further deteriorated the position as people's trust began falling down. On 24th October 1929, people began withdrawing the investments and stocks, which resulted in the fall of the stock exchange. The day is still called as the Black Thursday, and this fall continued till Tuesday, also known as Black Tuesday. Overall, the growth rate fell down drastically, and a surplus withdrawal led to the stagnation of the entire economy, and soon people were on a mass level unemployed, as companies had to be shut. The effects of the stock market crash were not just limited to one country, but affected even other smaller and bigger nations, countries like Great Britain, European countries like France, Germany, Italy, etc., and even Asian countries were affected as a result. This period was known as the Great Depression period, and it was a dark era for all nations. Germany was worst affected, as it changed the entire political conditions of the country, and the ever-powerful party lost its election during 1932, and Nazis came to power in 1932, making Hitler the leader. On the other hand, in Italy, the trade and commerce drastically fell, which led the government to take severe steps in regard for the same. In the USA, too, the government changed, and Roosevelt came to power and brought in many changes. Before the same, 1932 was a dark period leading to the fall of the economy. Britain and India stood connected, as India was under the colonial rule of Britain, and suffered great losses as the colonial rule became even more stricter, owing to losses, and farmers were the biggest losers of the same, with the economy falling to a very low. From the period starting from 1930 to 1939 till the beginning of World War I, the regaining movement was taking place. Countries and the respective governments played an important role in making the economy grow. Some of the important measures which took place were the change in power in the USA during the 1933 election. Roosevelt became the president and brought in the change of new rule, which was a way to bring in welfare policies on the basis of the society, employment, taxing, etc. The funds of the Federal Reserve were spent for the same, and this even brought in criticisms against the government. On the other hand, Great Britain made their country a welfare state, and all these factors led to the development of the different economies. However, the best development came to countries when the World War II started. The USA was not a participant until Japan attacked on Pearl Harbor, and in 1941 the US participated in the war. This resulted in the end of Great Depression, as employment opportunities were created and the young generation lads joined the army. Females and other aged peoples joined labor works and manufacturing units. The same was the condition of other countries, and finally, though the war brought devastations, it acted as a boost to the abolishment of the Great Depression.